everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I am Stormy Grace, and today it's neat as we travel in the interwebs and the digital times that we get to meet other fellow travelers who love astrology, who experience it in their life. And I was absolutely privileged to meet Mango, and I had to bring her over because, man, I'm all the sunshine. And Mango's like, okay, Stormy, but also, like, some of this is hard. And I really love that about our dynamic. And I wanted to bring Mango and share her with you guys and take a look at these energies, especially this Taurus-Scorpio axes, the eclipses that we're going to be going through. Mars is going retrograde, and the way that these dynamics, we can easily gloss over them, or we can really get into the thick of them, which is very scorpionic. So Mango, welcome. Welcome over.
Thank you, Stormy. Thanks so much for having me here. I really appreciate it. And yeah, like we were just talking about a little bit before we started this official recording. I've got sticky notes, and most of them I've gotten rid of. But I've just got this one like hanging out stuck to my laptop, and it says, "Where am I going? And why am I in this handbasket?" You know, and I thought that maybe, I mean that humorously, but I also, came up with that idea, that possible title for the month of November, because we are in a time, this is always a time of year when I encourage myself and people that I work with to put some extra energy directed inward to look at our, our own inner workings and inner motivations, these things that Scorpio is sort of naturally inclined to do at this time of year. But, this year in particular, I probably don't have to mention, I probably don't have to explain to anybody that 2022 has been a little bit of a rocky year. Just there's so much material there, that Uranus-Saturn square, which I feel that now is actually figures so strongly in these eclipse charts, is a big part of it. But, just looking at this eclipse season and the condition that Mars is in, which is the natural ruler, along with Pluto in modern astrology, really presents some challenges this year. And I think particularly in the lunar eclipse chart of November 8th, because there's such an intense clump of oppositions with the sun and moon and Venus and Mercury and Uranus and the nodes, and they're all squared by Saturn. Some of what we're seeing and what we're going to be experiencing and already are, as we lead up to these eclipses, are some of the kind of harder consequences of and some of the longer term consequences of maybe some of the results of the unconscious drives and ambitions, in combination with stuff that we really don't like to look at, things that that aren't necessarily like the pretty part of the zodiac or of the human experience. And I think that Taurus-Scorpio axis, again, partly in good humor, but also in reality, the experience of human life on Earth is, a little bit of heaven and a little bit of hell.
Absolutely.
And so I think, again, this isn't like, probably there are people out there who don't need my help, like to plunge into despair. There are other people, and I'll get to that. But anyway, I just want to acknowledge, and I think it is important to acknowledge, that there's a lot of suffering out there in the world. And, I think it's also really important to make the point of what traditionally is referred to as the natal promise. And that's just to say that, whatever's going on in the larger world, we're all very much connected in the collective unconscious. Everybody's part of it, however aware or not you are, however permeable your shield is or not. But they're just like during the pandemic. I mean, for most people, it was a pretty trying time. By the way, it's not over. We're just pretending. Mars square Neptune, airborne infections, Gemini, all that. But where was I? I just lost my train of thought. There's some Mars and Gemini squaring Neptune. Yeah, organization.
I'm
But
keeping the
yeah, what I
thoughts
was kind
here.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, oh my God, totally. Yeah, but I was just wanted to say that, just like many people during the hardest part of the pandemic, had terrible losses, loss of life, loss of income, loss of just the assumptive reality of like how we navigate day-to-day life and in this world. And at the same time, there are other people who like found their freedom, who made piles of money, who didn't lose any loved ones, and who, had a very different experience. So, as we're talking about these difficult eclipse setups and just like a tough month globally in the month of November, and really I would say like the fall of well, like the next 10 years. Oh no.
Sure. Well, it
Um,
definitely does come on with this idea that we're not always just doing something for 3 to 6 weeks at a time. Sometimes it is the entirety of the season, and being aware of tracking the timing of how these
yeah.
things are going is where I think astrology itself delivers its promise. Because this idea, like, I don't like to create transit chasers, because I'm like, you will get the idea that in 6 weeks it's going to just be different or be whatever. But if you don't understand the larger theme of what you're looking at and the timing behind that, that is not entirely useful, I don't think.
No, it's all a continuum. It's
Mhm.
all a, overlapping continue. And here's a kind of a sad scorpionic note, but I was checking out some of your videos, Stormy, and you were in a couple of them that I listened to, you were kind of driving the point home. Oh, am I going to get this right? That directing people to maybe think back to what were some themes going on in your life back in 2003, because that was the last time I think that we had the nodes in this place that they're in right now. And that really rang a bell for me, because I, just without even thinking about it, very quickly came to mind that at that time, I was going through a very painful loss of my first cat that I'd had on my own as an adult. I'd got him, in my little apartment when I was 21 years old. And, I have a Scorpio moon, so I get very attached. I'm very loyal to my people, my pets, what have you. That's a great thing about the fixed signs and about the Taurus-Scorpio axis. It's a little bit harder when it comes to letting go of those attachments. I can tell you that. But I'm now, however, 30, 20, whatever, how many, 18, 18.6 years later, that nodal cycle, I'm looking at a 17-year-old cat who, in some ways is, I feel like the last remaining, like, member of what I had created as my own little immediate family with my husband and our cats and all of that. And she was a gift I received from him as a 40th birthday present, and she's in end stage kidney failure.
Mm.
And Mars has moved into my, by some house systems, my sixth house, Gemini, small pets. And I see the writing on the wall. And of course, I'm hoping and praying. I'm doing everything I can to support her life and to be with her here in the moment now. But, so it's, again, it's not, if for people out there who have personal points, or planets that are along this axis,
Mhm.
you're probably in a pretty personal way being confronted with some situations that require a letting go of, a release of perhaps something, Sun conjunct Venus in the solar eclipse, that you love, that you don't want to let
Absolutely.
go of.
Absolutely.
So
And so I'm interested to hear, though, just to pull it personally for you, because my thought process around it is like, life in 2003, it happens, and it kind of a shock for most of us at that particular time. And because we just live our patterns, as it comes back around this time, do you feel like you're able to approach this system or this situation with wisdom, a different level of wisdom or a different level of peace?
um, I think if you engage with life as a process of continual transformation, which is, one of the blessings of Scorpio, you can always grow in your wisdom. I'd like to say, oh yeah, I'm much more peaceful about it this time around. You know, I can't 100% say that.
Sure.
I think one of the gifts of the Scorpio season too is and it's vulnerable, it's vulnerability, but the transparency.
Mhm.
Um, you know, so I'm not going to lie to you. I've had already some really hard moments. You know,
Yeah.
I've another aspect of the Taurus Scorpio polarity, and this is parts of other parts of the zodiac too, but particularly where there may be like really strong attachments and devotion and loyalty and all that, are issues of codependency, you know.
Mhm.
And I myself have done a lot of work personally around those issues, and they come from like way back in my roots, and probably the roots of my roots and the roots of my roots. Um, but I have felt and I've been aware of like, damn, that cat is my last, you know, like I can't live without her, you know.
Right. But coming
Um,
like face to face with it
yeah,
is a lot of this. And like you said, like how am I going? Like, where am I going in my handbasket? I love that, right? Because that's the question you ask as you're toting through that handbasket is like, is this, do I still honestly need this to thrive on, regardless of how I feel about it or what it has meant? I think there's a lot of that signature, and it is not always comfortable.
no, and I will say, you know, to your point, and I have thought about this, you know, when my first cat died, you know, my husband was still alive then, and I was so devastated by the loss of this cat. I'm like, I'm never going through that again. I'm not doing it. I don't ever, that's it. I'm done. Well, you know, this little adorable cat like walked up our driveway, little homeless, poor flea bitten thing. And he's like, and she was not taking no for an answer. And he wasn't taking no for an answer. So I very like I was like, no, I took the little kitten, the cutest little thing. How could I ever do that? Like outside? No, you know, because I hadn't processed the loss of this other cat.
Mhm.
Anyway, bringing that forward, I certainly have had, you know, I laugh, whatever. I acknowledge that now this cat that I have remaining is absolutely the best cat I've ever had. I could never have a more perfect cat. I could never, like, she's just everything you'd ever want in a cat if you're mango. And I never would have had this cat if, now I still feel that way about the other cats that have died too. They're all the
Sure.
best, you know, but I can't, it escaped me. And of course I have been informed by like, yeah, but when you lose something, it creates a space. And as much as you don't want to let go of, you know, sometimes they're really like unhealthy comfort zones that we stay in.
Mhm.
You know, we're talking about Scorpio and Taurus, it can be addictions or, like I say, codependent relationships that really are preventing our growth on some level. But that doesn't mean we don't instinctually want to hang on, you know. Again, especially those of us who different moon signs, different charts, which are so full of individual nuance, have different ways of attaching and letting go, you know.
Yeah.
And I think there's a richness and a depth that can be found in the Scorpio Taurus polarity of attachments, and maybe a deeper pain.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
it's fixed
maybe,
signs, fixed
yeah,
energy. There is a
yeah,
deeper level of pain, right? Because
exactly.
it is in order to change it for good or for ill, it means a deep adjustment, and it is an unrooting, I think,
That's
at
right.
its core.
Yeah, and when you have an unrooting like that, you know, those roots are going back down into your very foundation. You know, being a Taurus, having Uranus in the sign of Taurus since 2018, 2019. I mean, I think a lot of people, I certainly have been very aware of this feeling of, you know, every day is like I'm walking on a shifting, I'm trying to go, you know, like accept that there's like this shifting foundations
Mhm.
beneath me. But it's daunting. And I think you know, I was discussing this with a client of mine who'd recently gone through some pretty significant losses and had made some decisions and is now in a place, which is part of this November eclipse too, of kind of saying like, what was I thinking? Like, why, how did I ever think that, you know, this was going to work out? And Anyway, the conversation evolved to grief, and I was recalling somewhere, coming across the notion, after I lost my husband, of the measure of love. The deeper and greater the love is, the grief matches that. And I think she said that she thought that was from Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. I don't know if you know that book, but it's a famous little book of wisdom, which if you don't, highly recommended it if you want a nice source of wisdom. But that really rings true for me, and perhaps for you too, as a Taurus. You can't
Yeah.
really have one. And again, that's the heaven and
Mhm.
hell. I mean,
Yeah.
of our experience. And to try to gloss over. And we sort of live in a culture that doesn't like to, the
Get
kind of,
in there. Get in
no,
there, right? That's what I just call it, the
yeah,
like, we have to get in here.
we do, whether we like it or not. And the thing is, we get in there one way or another. So if we don't do it with consciousness, then we do it in other ways that like can even hurt even worse. And
Yeah.
that there again is why I'm really interested in mundane astrology as well as personal astrology, even though obviously that's not the focus of my practice. So some of what I'm talking about, and I have a 10th house moon, so, and it's with Neptune and Scorpio. So I'm attuned to the ills and the woes of the world. But what some of what I see globally as being obviously, collapse of many of the tangible kind of material structures that we've relied upon, I think also has come from our unwillingness to look at what what these attachments and sort of
Hmm.
power relationships are, and just kind of gloss over, like we knew about issues with fossil fuels and how they could contribute to a bad impact on the planet all the way back in the 1950s. There are recorded conversations about these things. These are not new issues. I mean,
Hmm.
I grew up was born with a nice exact Uranus Pluto conjunction in the eighth house, 1965. Like, I think of the Generation X, that's like the first year of it, and I think of it as sort of like, the transition from the hope of the hippies to the existential, like, welcome to the world of punk rock, like,
Right.
fuck you, none of that worked kind of.
Right.
But I can remember seeing Rachel Carson's book on the bookshelf as a little kid. Of course, she was maligned, and for that book and all of that. So again, these if we don't clean out the wound the first time around, it
You will
just,
get another.
yeah, you get another chance, and the surgery is going to be deeper and harder, and it's going to take longer to recover from. And some of those wounds are going to be fatal.
Yeah.
We're also
Yeah.
on yeah, anyway, we don't have to talk about the sixth extinction. Like I said, I'm not trying to contribute to the massive suicide problem that we also have going on amongst our youth these days.
Sure, but
But yeah,
that is a
these,
part of this, don't you think? I mean,
I,
because I want us to kind of transition for a second here and get more into the depth of the qualities of the Taurus and Scorpio energy so that we can really walk away from this with an understanding that the depth of these fixed energies, it's so painful if we can't find ways to deal. And I think that all of that fixity is a contributor to a lot of the suicide that we're seeing. I really do, in many different ways, right? Like there is traditional suicide, but I also think that we are seeing relationship suicide where I
yeah.
can't and I just abandon ship. And so these suicides, and some of them are very incremental, I think are at an all-time high
Yeah.
under these energies. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's start in the Scorpio qualities and maybe get a little bit deeper into that.
Okay. All right. Well, off the top, um, Scorpio is often described as sort of, in three different forms. Like the lowest form is the scorpion hiding under the rock, like waiting to sting you so it can take what you have, so it can take your power, and, that sort of like vampire, destructive energy. Mars is our raw energy and it's our procreative energies, but it doesn't have the reputation of, it doesn't get assigned as the god of war for nothing. You know, battle for resources, battle for survival. When you look at the wars of the world, underneath whatever the surface cause is always, is supposed to be, it's always about the stuff that's buried in the ground that sustains us and makes us powerful and rich. Oil, gas, minerals, precious metals, all that good stuff. So the kind of base instinct for survival gone wrong, if you're putting it in like a human context where we have all this power beyond other species, I think, is representative of, classically of, again, I kind of hesitate with these hierarchical judgments, and yet they also have their place. And then, the more elevated form of Scorpio is, because Scorpios contain a depth and a knowledge on such an intuitive level. Like Scorpio naturally is compelled, again, depending on, I know modern astrology doesn't like to talk about faith too much, however you want to couch that. But Scorpio, in spite of itself, will sort of naturally propel towards like this transformative process. And, the sort of middle level is like the eagle that's transcended a lot of those more base instincts, again, like lust and greed and, a power over model. It can come from, Scorpio, I think of as probably, one of the very most courageous signs, and a kind of courage that's lasting, as opposed to an Aryan courage that's like, yeah, it's a flash, and I'm like out on the battlefield for a couple minutes, or a short period, and I'll die for my cause. But Scorpio is going to like hang in. Like Scorpio has durability. All the fixed signs will carry that through.
And you have to be, don't you think? Like when we think about this scorpionic energy, you've got to have some sustainability to water, get into the genuine, vulnerable emotion of what can give you life, but is also probably currently killing you. You've got to be able to survive your lust, your greed, your selfishness, and have a vulnerability to say, as a human, I have to embrace that I possess those, but then survive them. That takes a hell of a lot of sustainability.
It does, and I think that is a great description, a metaphor that, or that describes the metaphor of the eagle, which is the next sort of symbol of Scorpio, that can indeed, soar above, rise above some of those, with Scorpio. Taurus can really be compulsions, can very easily be, unconscious drivers that are so strong. In a way, it can be easier, like to stay, up to a point, to live and die on that sword, on that level, So so then we have that eagle, and that's where the thick Scorpio, gets its first real wisdom, because it has a larger view. And Scorpio, I also think about as, the spiritual versus the material. So, there's a spiritual capacity contained within that sign that I think is as great as any other thing in the zodiac, but that, as you say, like the sustained effort and the durability it takes to transcend. And it's not that as humans we don't want to leave those, we don't want to, it's not time while we're still humans to leave our desires and our passions and compulsions and all that stuff behind. It's more about like finding the right relation to
those things,
to them, and to our own power. And are we surviving off controlling and taking power away from other life, or are we more of the empowering ourselves and then helping to empower other people? And so like that third tier that astrologers just love to talk about as if it's like some easy, it's the phoenix that rises from the ashes. And, we all want to be that is the ultimate outcome of that scorpionic process, is that we really ascend to a level of wisdom and a satisfaction that can't just be found in the physical material realm, The thing about that is, as much as it's nice to think about that imagery and it's wonderful and everything, you don't get that phoenix to rise until you got burned to the ground.
Absolutely. That's why we have to say it. This is why I always say, like, Scorpio really needed both Pluto and Mars, because you have to have Pluto to burn that shit to the ground, and it's a deep
Yeah.
burn. But
Yeah,
if you don't have Mars, then all you have is a dead bird, right? Like
that's
something's
right.
got to get it back in the air,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
So we need
absolutely.
them both.
We do. And you know what? I think an interesting configuration during any Scorpio season, anytime you'd be looking at eclipses along that Taurus-Scorpio polarity, of course, is, you know, which I do hope we'll get a chance to get into, like the condition of Mars,
Yeah.
and always its relationship to Pluto. And we look at like where Mars and Pluto are, you know, in both of these eclipse charts. They're in a quincunx, 150-degree aspect with each other.
Mm.
That's not, and we have a out of bounds Mars going out of bounds at the same time that the Sun and Venus move into Scorpio, and Saturn goes forward, you know, moves forward, stations forward for the last time in Aquarius. Mars and Pluto are not necessarily working together in the most helpful way.
Yeah,
And I think it,
absolutely. Absolutely.
you
And
know,
you guys, if you're listening, I'll just throw this in here quickly. If you are not sure what Mango's talking about when we're talking about out of bounds planets, check out the video in the playlist on out of bounds planets so you can really get your head around that, because it changes the key and the frequency of what's going on in that vibration quite a bit, especially depending on what that out of bounds planet is interacting with. Now, I do think, thank God, it's making an aspect, because
yeah,
Mars out of bounds on its own, giving us just all of that, that's too
yeah,
much.
especially in Gemini. It's like aggression going around and around and around and around in circles, you know.
Right, right. And let's like
Um,
think it to death.
yeah,
Yeah,
I know that one. Yeah, yeah. And you know, Mars is making a few kind of a pretty very significant aspects, but that relationship to Pluto, I think, you know, points out the need to make adjustments, physical, psychological, resource
mm,
adjustments, and it also has a health connotation to it, you know. And I don't mean to,
no,
but this
no,
is
bring it
also a
out,
good,
bring it out.
well, I
Let's,
mean, this is also a good place to just insert the obvious, which is, but it's good to mention because I think probably some of your audience has a, you know, you probably have varying levels of understanding of astrology. Some of your audience are probably pretty sophisticated in their knowledge, and other people may tune in, you know, they don't have much of an interest in learning. They just want to get a sense of like kind of the shape and color, the feeling of you know, how stuff's going to affect them. So it's always important to point out that every astrologer, of course, is interpreting, is reading chart. You get your chart read. That astrologer can't take their own chart out of the picture, you know.
mhm,
So
mhm.
you know, I make a conscious intention before I read for somebody to, you know, where my personal makeup can offer something of benefit for that to come through and to share in that way. But particularly with that, you know, Scorpio Taurus polarity, to be careful not to project too much of my own view, or at least to acknowledge that and say, hey, you know,
Mhm,
this is my
mhm.
opinion. So I just back up and say that because when I keep mentioning, you know, there's health issues, and there are health issues, and it's not just my projection, but I am somebody who's dealt with, you know, most of my adult life dealing with chronic illness. So I'm a little more attuned to, you know, to those sorts of dangers than somebody else might be like, why is she, you know, anyway, but there is
Sure, but
contained within
it's
the,
worth pulling in that understanding
yeah,
for sure. Okay.
yeah. So, but anyway, I do think with, you know, Mars being retrograde and out of bounds and square Neptune in Pisces, there's a whole lot of denial going on of, you know, because we're all got sick of it and it doesn't fit in with the politics and everybody wants to win. And, you know, there's a little bit of a there's a lot of lack of integrity going on right now in terms of the dissemination of information.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And so, for those people, not just who may be vulnerable with their own physical situations, but if you have people in your life that you are in close contact with, or you have elderly parents, or you live with people who are immunocompromised, understand that whichever, it doesn't matter what the administration is or what side it's coming down from, this Mars quincunx Pluto, in addition to Mars being in Gemini, the sign of the lungs, out of bounds, retrograde, and square Neptune, what we can't see, and which also has an implication for illness. I think that these, infectious diseases are feeding into, again, maybe not on the surface, maybe not so much acknowledged, but into some of the problems that we're encountering and that we're going to continue to encounter this fall. And one of the blessings of astrology, even though we don't always want to know, is that we can get an insight into some things that we might not otherwise be aware of, and again, depending on how fatalistic one is, maybe make some decisions or adjustments according to that.
Absolutely. Well, and one of the concepts that we talk about, even in terms of the body on this channel, is using the Mars retrograde to also look at the body, look at your nervous system. What is the strategy that you are using around your nervous system, around maybe some communication and learning, and who's in your network hygiene as well, because all of those things affect the nervous system. They affect how do you feel like you can breathe and move and cope in your physical body on a daily basis, right? And that takes that quincunx and adjustment, because I've always interacted with this. This has always been my source of this, and now I've got to adjust because physically I'm finding I'm blown out. My adrenals glands are like blown out. I can't handle all the busy. And so it forces some accountability, I think, as well on our parts, where it's like, what is my strategy for information? Who is in my network that speaks to information and learning for me as well?
Yeah. And I think definitely, and when we combine this, the type of energy of Taurus and Scorpio, with which also has very much to do with like issues of trust and betrayal. And then we have a Mars that is it's described as kind of crazy positioning. But Mars square Neptune, we're not getting the whole story. In Gemini, there's both intentional and unintentional dishonesty and manipulation going on. The question arises and is worthy of some conscious contemplation, like, who do I trust? And can I trust what I've trusted before? And even taking that on an internal level. Now, again, this will be different for different people, but if you get Mercury in a mutable sign and it happens to be affected by by this square, you can it can be Mars and Gemini, mental wars. They can be wars going on in your own thinking,
your own mind,
in your own head. Which voice do I listen to? They've got all this to choose from. So one of the things that again, because I am somebody that is got personal points that in affected by both the eclipses and also this Mars Neptune configuration. I'm really finding in everything that I do, I kind of try to come up with helpful suggestions for my clients to negotiate some of these energies, and I'm just like running up against like every other minute, like, Mango, you got to take your own advice.
Right. And actually, that is the hard part, I think.
But actually, I'm having enough confrontation with these very issues myself, that I'm having to. It's like really necessary. It in some ways feels like life and death that I, take some of the advice, and some of that, I don't know. I don't want to, I feel like maybe I'm talking too much, but I do at some point have some thoughts of just like general advice for people who are getting personally, that are really personally affected by some of these more challenging configurations. And then, just also some thoughts about people who are doing pretty well. There's got to be somebody, right? But people who are
Sure.
doing pretty well during this time and how they might be able to help out.
So maybe
Um,
let's bring that in while we talk about, let's talk about, okay, because we see kind of a vision of what's going on with this eclipse that's coming here in October in the Scorpio side, and we've explored the Scorpio qualities a little bit. So tell us, yeah, what are some of your ideas if you're really getting hit hard, how to navigate, and if you are living your best life, what is your suggestion there? And then we'll explore Taurus.
okay, that sounds good. Yeah, and in my own unfortunate attempts to get organized, I actually made a couple little lists about this because every time yeah, it's just the nature. So I'm actually gonna, um, if I could, okay, if you're under the direct fires, if you're in Mars, the crosshairs of some of these things. Oh wait, no, that's my list if you're not. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I would say, well, again, I think there's kind of two main themes that are worthy of attention, which is this process, the scorpionic basic process of transformation and cultivating a willingness to actually look inward, go to the feeling places, the harder places, and acknowledge the reality of what's going on as part of that process that we want to get to be the Phoenix one day. But also on the other side, the other thing with this Mars-Neptune square, I think it really calls for compassion and more cultivation of compassion. And that can be one of the positive ways to use a Mars-Neptune combination. So, one of the first things on my list for those people who are suffering a lot right now, is to put a conscious intention into having compassion for yourself. And there's as many different ways to do that as there are different people who will respond in different ways. And I'll get to some specifics there, but I think another important thing, and again, it's pretty basic, but when you're when you feel like you're in that place where you're like been caught under that undertow and you're like, how am I going to get back up? To remember that this is a passing phase, that things are not always going to feel this way. You got to feel them how they are and have the willingness to do that and not just stay in your head, which can be like irritating and distracting. And, we can try to kind of escape from the depth of emotion. And Scorpio is really like about emotion. So I think that understanding a time frame and reminding yourself that there's process going on here. I think for like first aid, some of the things I've been doing are like standing under the warm water for an extra amount of time, putting my feet in an Epsom salt bath. People who are sick, this is a great time to undergo some sort of a detoxification regimen. Again, when I say regimen, be nice to yourself. Don't expect perfection. This isn't a time to like, I've got to get so healthy, I'm going to like kill myself to do it. That's
Right.
not what I'm saying.
That does not develop body trust because
No, it doesn't.
we're looking to also form new levels of trust with what you're discovering.
That's absolutely, yeah. And, I highly recommend, any kind of healing modalities that involve a gentle manipulation of your energies and the balancing of those. And I started back earlier this summer, seeing a new acupuncturist. So I just go once a month, and she introduced me to what are called yoga nidra meditations. Oh my God, I found a few that I'm a very musical person and I really respond to sound. Some of these guided meditations with sound baths they really are like first aid for me, and I have to kind of get myself over the, man, you can't go lie down again. And like, but actually you might find you get a lot more mileage. We're not with Mars Neptune, we've got like a drain of our energy. So these are ways to, I think of this as like a wired and tired kind of square as well. So we're really exhausted, but we can't really get restorative sleep. these yoga nidras are fabulous. Are you familiar with those,
I
Stormy?
am, yeah, big.
Ah,
I
yeah,
am, and a big fan. And thanks for bringing that up too, because I do think when we look at Venus's influence here, we've taken value to something that maybe was valuable a long time ago, or someone else told us you just go, 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 and you wrap it up at night. So it's so funny that you're like, yeah,
right.
I gotta just maybe lay down and have a few minutes of this, and that becomes like that softening and compassion that I think the
Yeah,
new moon energy brings in, where it's like it's okay for you to detach from what was and create a new trust in your space
yeah,
that is valuable now, right? And
yeah,
that's a lot of compassion.
yeah. And again, you know, the more we can do that for ourselves, the more
Mm-hmm.
we can do that in our relations with other people. And
Mm,
I think especially for people who are used to being able to be capable and have like a really helping nature and I've got to take care of everybody else, it's really important to realize that actually you're not going to be able to do good service for those people that you love, or that you have some sort of obligation to, or that's your job or whatever, if you don't
yeah.
do it for yourself first. And this is a time, so if you have trouble giving yourself permission, do it for them.
Right.
Check
We give
out
you
and
permission. Here's two
yeah,
people
you've got
giving all the permission.
it's your assignment. You know,
Yes.
yeah. You know, and I think just so yeah, obviously limit yourself to any stresses that are easy to identify, and understand that you don't have to argue. You can disagree. You can, you know, if because that Mars and Gemini is like, it's like trigger happy, so people can be really quick and fast with not very nice words.
Mm-hmm.
That's theirs. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to get into it. You don't have to internalize it, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And again, that's not about not listening. Again, there's a real nuance that's needed here in this Mars Neptune configuration. And another thing that I think is worthy of mention, again, my little Scorpio moon, I don't really mean to like trash like half the other astrologers out there, I really don't. But one of the things that I think is a danger, and that particularly at this time can be destructive, and that is played into some of the kind of condition that of struggling that we're in, is you know, a lot of people will gravitate towards astrology as part of, they want a greater spiritual understanding or somehow connected to their own spiritual journey. And you know, in terms of the whole kind of new age version of astrology, I think the spiritual bypass is a really easy trap
Mm-hmm.
to fall into. And I
Yeah.
myself have heard, you know, several very well-known and well-meaning astrologers kind of give the lowdown on some of the crap that's going on, and then give out the advice of, you know, you've got to resist thinking those dark things, and you've got to like keep your
Yeah.
thoughts happy and keep your, you know, all
You're
of
like,
that.
welcome to Scorpio season. Now get in there and experience all of it.
Yeah, because we have every reason when we're in this kind of a kind of situation to want to escape, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Beware of false gods, you know, beware of the spiritual bypass.
Yeah.
um Give yourself, you know, cultivate these little escapes, these first aid, you know, give yourself healthy ways to take breaks and to step back,
But to
to be
process,
so,
but to be
but yeah,
in the
as a
entirety
as
of
a
the process.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And you know, the other side of that is it's a really tempting time if you have these inclinations to sink into addictive behaviors. You know, let me just have one more drink. Let me just have one more, you know, whatever your thing is. You
Mm-hmm.
know, your drug or
I
behavior of choice.
And I think that
Because
resentment is is an addictive behavior to
blame and shame
blame
game.
game. Yes, the blame and shame game it up. And it's like a
Yeah.
great practice there is as soon as it's coming out, because you're not going to be resentment free. Like, welcome to being a human. You're going to catch your resentment, right?
Really? I didn't know that. I have Scorpio moon. I never have any.
Right. And I'm like, listen, I have like a Libra moon, and I can tell you get
Yeah.
resentments,
You
right?
never have any.
And and so this practice of as soon as it comes out of your mouth, good. Okay, first of all, it came out of your mouth, but also point that finger back, because it's just real, but it's just a reflection of your work, right? Like we don't come out of whack nicely.
Right.
It's not like, you
Right.
know what, I'm not living my best life happily.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. you
Right.
know, so
So what about
um
for the people who are living their best life, Mango? What do you tell them under
well,
this?
I think the people who are living their, and it's all our best life, even though it doesn't feel like it sometimes, but people who are like
Sure.
feeling good, feeling empowered, things are going their way. Again, this is a great time to put a little bit of that extra energy you have and extra resources you have into the cultivation of compassion for the fact that not everybody's in that. There's a lot of
Hmm.
people, there's a lot of need out there. So, you know, it sounds, again, I feel sort of silly saying some of these things, but little things can make such a huge difference. So, you have an ailing friend, make them some soup, get in your Gemini car and drive over there, Mars, and deliver it, you know,
Hmm.
be
Hmm.
kind. Volunteer your time, your energy, your money, your resources. If you've got a lot of extra energy, we have more displaced people from floods and natural disasters, wars, and go volunteer for Habitat Humanity, or even consider taking somebody into your home, you know, whatever your particular know that you have more to offer and you can have more of an impact, and that there's value in that, and that only will add to your own value. And you know, apart from how you interact with other people and their suffering, this is just a great time to cultivate your own learning, like upgrade your own
Absolutely.
thinking, you know, find
Hmm.
a course of study that really excites you or challenges you, you know, grow your mind, grow your perspective, make an effort, you know, if you feel like you're in a pretty solid place with your own understanding of life and your path and everything, this is a great time to make an effort. Again, I'm not saying to go in there and reside there, but try to understand. And there's all
Someone
different ways you
else.
can do this. How other people come to their bizarre conclusions, and like when somebody lashes out, instead of being just like idiot, you know, whatever,
Hmm.
if you got something extra, you know, just for your own edification or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
practice, you know, exercising your mind in a way, because Gemini is, you know, versatility, of thinking in different
Yeah.
ways and trying to understand, get a greater understanding of all the different perspectives out there, and how they can, you know, and you know, things like if you can do whatever you want with your body, like dance it out, baby. Go for a hard swim, you know, start a
Use
new
those
martial art.
lungs, right?
Yeah, you know,
Fill them.
yeah, do the Wim Hof breathing or whatever, you know, gives you a bit of a challenge and involves some of the Neptunian energy of,
Hmm.
you know, water or flowing movements, that kind of thing. And I would say, again, now this isn't what everybody gets off on, but to those who have an interest in harmonizing, focus your intention, on what we have in common. And if you're in a position of
Yes.
leadership, be really mindful about what you're communicating and choose to communicate in a way that brings people together rather than
Hmm.
divides people, because you know, Mars and Gemini is like divide and conquer, and we can like temporarily make ourselves feel bigger and stronger by doing that. If you're in a place of power right now, or like I say, leadership or strength, put some energy there.
Hmm.
um yeah,
Those
like I
are
say, there's
those are good tips though, and a great way to find your space, right? Like where am I? What can I grow into, or how can I expand that? You know, in Mars and Gemini, I really love that suggestion you gave because the action and the strategy of learning a different language
yeah,
is fantastic. Whether you're going to go out and actually learn a different language or just talking to someone who does not experience the world from the perspective that you do is so good. And there's a
it's
curiosity
enriching.
to it. Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be good for your experience, because I'm making this sound like, you know, oh, now I have to become like an altruist. No, 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 no,
No.
no. This is for your own
Hmm.
growth, your own, you know, we don't only want to think about the scorpionic process of transformation as, oh my God, I have to do it, I have no choice. You know, sometimes it feels a little bit like that, but actually we can, you know, when we're not like in dire straits or up against it or in some struggle of survival, we actually have a
Mhm.
great opportunity to choose to grow ourselves in any number of ways. And,
Yeah.
again, language is a great, all of those Geminian occupations and subjects are great areas. Challenge yourself to read a book every week, or read stuff that isn't, we
It's
people
in
don't read
common
anymore,
to you.
whatever. But
Right. Like things that could enrich you. My
yeah,
mom is not an astrologer, and she's like, sometimes people just have to grow the fuck up, Storms. And I'm like, oh, well, all
thanks,
right,
Mom.
mom. I mean, thanks. I mean, that was basically my whole podcast, in like 6 words. Thank you.
There you go. You
You
should have
know,
your mom on
I
have your
know. Oh
mom
my,
on.
oh my God. Well, so let's change modes for a minute and
Mm,
talk about some of these Taurus qualities to work with, and then we'll talk about the lunar eclipse that's going to pull us, into November.
okay.
Yeah, Taurus.
Good.
I
Yeah.
just like to say
Is
Taurus. I don't want to say
is
I'm
it
biased, but it's
Tor-
it's a
I
wonderful, wonderful
I
word.
Taurus is awesome. Like, Taurus, I mean, again, this is simplistic. Taurus is like that when it's rocking at its best, it is the heavenly experience it's the heavenly part of the human experience. It's the joy of being in a physical body with five senses, in
Mm,
the contrast between the beauty. I mean, like a nature loving, super sensitive person. I live surrounded by water and trees and mountains. And I mean, I'm just like, the smells of fall are so good. Taurus in its best sense is just like being able to stabilize the basic needs, be well situated in the physical experience, and really enjoy
mhm,
what it is to be a physical animal, which is what we are. And you know these years of Uranus, the planet of disruption and volatility, being in Taurus, a sign which is so handy at and very much has a purpose of like stabilization of the material resources and experience. I sort of think of like Maslow's
the
table
hierarchy.
of hierarchy of needs.
Mhm,
Taurus can it almost has like a special magic of getting those basic needs in place. I think you probably know this. Taurus is among the very most hardworking, business-minded signs of the zodiac. It's a very material sign, but it's a work hard, play hard sign. It's a Venus-ruled sign, so it's like, in some ways, it wants to get all that stuff stabilized and get all that really hard work done. They can just like kick back, have a
Yeah.
great meal, a good bottle of wine, some really nice sex, a good hard sleep, and get up and go spend your day doing something you really love, to
Yes.
gather more resources. You can come home, make the great dinner, and get up and do it all over again. So
Mhm.
that's kind of a simplistic. There's a little bit of a simplistic. All of these are, yeah, whatever. I can get complicated,
Sure, but they're still
but
really great representations because I think, Mango, one of the things I remember is that even those of us who are really well studied, and you are one of those people in astrology, it's like, but where am I Taurusing in my life? Like, how's that going? So hearing it even in simplistic terms, to ask the question of, where is that in me?
yeah,
And what's the evolution? Where am I on that scale? I need that to be in simple terms sometimes, because the fine art of just being and being beautiful is very Tauran.
yeah,
And if you're not doing that very well, let's talk about that.
right, yeah, yeah. And I mean, I have a background both literally behind me. But as a visual artist, I have
Mm,
Venus rising. If only it were in Taurus, it's in Capricorn. But Venus rising in my chart. So to me, like, the experience of Venusian experiences of the arts, of music, of visual art, of it actually really has it can really elevate me spiritually. They say like
mm,
beauty is skin deep. No, not
mm,
necessarily. I don't think so. In fact, one of the things about the astrology of this fall, and this particular polarity, is that I've thought about, is like what humbles us? Where do we get our humility? Because these are kind of some humbling circumstances going on and themes and everything. And to me personally, and again, this is me with Venus rising, the two most sort of awe, struck things that can really throw me back in a good way into my own humility are the experiences of beauty, the engagement with beauty, the creation of beauty, the taking in of beauty. And again, that can be through the arts, through music, through the beauty of movement, through the expression of physical love, through, Taurus, the finest food, the softest sweater, the sensual, the smell of a flower, whatever way that our chart directs us. And then on the other end, I don't think there's anything that's much more humbling than death, than loss,
Absolutely.
than grief, so I see both of these like this polarity, both Taurus and Scorpio, as being related to, like, in a way, the most intense and beautiful experiences that we have in our
Absolutely.
lives as humans, that are both empowering, Scorpio, and nurturing and beautiful, like Taurus,
Yeah.
and that ultimately, like, make our love bigger, whatever it's for,
Yeah.
what
Absolutely. I mean, I love that because we're going for in opposition and integration, trying to bring those things together. And I cannot think of, I'm like, I own lots of pretty things and I like them. But also, the most beautiful I have ever felt was sitting across the table with a cup of coffee, another woman telling her the things I am deeply passionate about. And I'm so passionate that they scare the shit out of me. And the things that I have done in this lifetime that I have been genuinely ashamed of, and to be received. That is both humility, it is grace, and it is beauty. And that, I think, is that integration of this axis,
yeah
because it either is that we bring it from the depths of that scorpionic energy where it stays recognized and vulnerable but shameful, right? And bring it forward to Taurus where it becomes a resource
yeah
instead of an obstacle. And I think we see that over and over and over again. So as we're having this lunar eclipse here in Taurus, it's like, what doesn't have value anymore?
right yeah
I think, like, where is that not a valuable resource anymore? And how can we reframe that? Because it is still opposing that Scorpio, right?
it is
Yes.
yes yeah
You're
no and
like,
I and
yes.
it's a really beautiful way of putting it, Stormy, and yeah, like the shame we carry and what it takes to be vulnerable enough to shine a light on that and share that. I think that I think in 12 steps programs, maybe that's like the fourth or fifth step where you take the inner inventory and then
Hmm.
you speak it to somebody else. And that's also something that somewhere in one of my many notes or lists, I thought about was, for people who are really struggling right now, this is a time to reach out for help and to
Hmm.
share, no matter how, because when we're struggling, and it's so much of our culture and social media, everything's has to look good on the surface or just drop out of sight. So I think it's a really important time to, this is relational, this solar eclipse, and lunar eclipses, just by the nature of oppositions, always are somewhat, but this solar eclipse with Venus, like in that same degree, is about how we relate to other people. So
Hmm. Hmm.
I would encourage that kind of sharing because it can be healing and uplifting, both for the person that is carrying the burden as well as the one that, is entrusted with the sharing of it. At the same time, that comes with a caveat of be discriminating about who you share these things with, because not
Hmm.
everybody's got that, capacity for empathy.
Hmm.
And a lot of people are really short on that end right now. So
Sure.
again, there's
Yeah.
some care to be taken there, but it's strong encouragement to share in a way that I think can help to free us from some of the prisons we keep ourselves in, that are programmed into us from our
Yeah,
from the beginning.
they've been there for so long, which is why I actually love at this particular eclipse time that we've got that Scorpio, right? Which is like the newness of it, the new moon portion of it is like you got stuff down there and it's maybe not great, or maybe it's just scary. Let's just put it in that frame. And the value is to bring it up and to bring it out into in public. Then Mars is retrograde in Gemini. Find your resource to talk that through because Taurus, it's not valuable anymore. Now it's some of the gold you've got to author. So I really think when I look at the cosmic landscape, it's kind of a conspiracy sometimes to help us out. You know what I mean? It
Yeah,
can be if you step into it, and we need mentorship, we need guidance, we need a tribe, we need what we need to get it done. But I ultimately think, as painful as this time may be, it's also a fantastic time of resource. And that's that Taurus energy. And also the landscape is different out here, right? Your tribe who understands depression or success or whatever your deal is more accessible with the internet, right?
right.
We've had a helper, right? Like maybe your tribe members are all in India, and thank God we've got the internet so you can connect with them.
Right. Yes. In a way, there are more opportunities to connect. And then in other ways, we have this contrast of people being really like factionated and closed off in ways. But obviously any eclipse, we can have an eclipse, solar eclipse, lunar eclipse that's with the south node or the north node. And of course, when we're dealing with the South Node, which this on the 25th, this solar eclipse, which is it's a partial eclipse, but I feel like it's a really
It's a good one though.
powerful
It's
eclipse.
powerful. Yeah.
It is because it's so early in the sign of Scorpio. I think it's like one degree and 59 minutes. So
Yeah.
it's an intense and with all the I don't want to get too technical. There's a lot of technical connections here that are pretty fascinating to me. But the nature of the South Node, in modern evolutionary astrology, it's like, oh yeah, that's your past life, the stuff that comes easy, your old comfort zone, and the North, in traditional astrology or in Vedic astrology, even just the simple principle of, what is diminishing as
Mm.
opposed to what's gaining, what's
Mhm.
increasing. You can think of it like that. But so when we have a South Node eclipse, generally things will come back, maybe even things we thought we left behind, and they will come back into the present, maybe to teach us something new about what we need to release now. And sometimes it's something like we really didn't completely, like we were chatting about a little bit, the cyclical nature of peeling the onion and what have you. Sometimes old issues will come back, or old relationships that somehow we haven't quite learned everything that we might learn from them, or we haven't entirely released them.
Mhm.
So again, with Venus, this, and then the lunar eclipses with Mercury, this is very much about, and of course I noticed that Mercury during the solar eclipse is in Libra, which is Venus's sign. So I feel like the deals that we've made
Mhm.
with ourselves, the relationship we have to ourselves, and then those deals that extend out to other people,
Yeah.
and again, like who we trust, and like what you were just saying, like who we, there's shifting going on with like who we entrust our vulnerabilities and our gifts to and with, are coming up for a re-examination. It's definitely time to release some of the ways that we have been accustomed to operating in those realms. And, along with that is the giving up on some level of what, that old familiar shoe,
Yeah.
that
Well, because that's
place.
Taurus, isn't it? My God, it's like, listen, I am probably still in love with Zach from third grade. I
You're
probably
right.
am. Like, listen,
He's
I
going to
just,
come back around.
on
And no,
some level, and here I am, 40, married to a beautiful human, love of my life. And I'm like, but Zach could come back. I
right.
mean, and that's a very Tauran or fixed energy quality. So it is
Yeah.
what you're saying is like, yeah, like there's no value. Like you gotta kind of come current in your reality and see, Taurus, is it time to pry the cold dead hands from that and make a little adjustment, right? Because my God, that will, the thing that you love might be killing you.
Right.
And it is
Well,
time to look at that.
yeah. Well, and I don't think I said it on the recording, but that's pretty funny what you say about the cold dead hand. Because, in thinking about, I'm not really accustomed to doing videos. I'm much more, like I say, Moon and Scorpio with Neptune. In some ways, my comfort zone is like I want to be invisible. I want it, when I'm one-on-one with somebody, that's great, and I'll disclose a lot if I think it can be helpful. But yeah, you put this on. I mean, I get it, leave my comfort zone. But I did bring the ashes of a dead lover. I do have a bracelet, a mineral, an earth from, my dead father, solar eclipse, people I love, and
Right?
I think also, and I got my Scorpio colors and everything, but I think also, some of these themes can also come back because as we get distance from things
Mm-hmm.
that we've left behind and been separated from, sometimes something will come back to be reincorporated or be that phoenix rising from the ashes, or that reset, that scorpionic like recycling, maybe
Mm-hmm.
something that we didn't understand the value of, from something that we've lost.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether it's the passing of time or other things that we've gone through, we can actually find the bits of gold
Yeah,
in some of those losses, and appreciate and bring those, again, it's like a discernment process, I think, that seems
absolutely.
really needed with with what Mars is doing. And these eclipses are like they're almost like an umbrella over, at least I think of them somewhat that way, like an umbrella over like the rest of the astrology. For, well, again, there's differences of opinion and how long lasting the effects of eclipses are, and we don't need to get into the details of those theories, but
Mm-hmm.
these have echoes through, like
Mm-hmm.
next, I think it's sometime in next May, the North Node will get to 2 degrees of Scorpio, where this
So
October
we're going to
25th.
look at it, right? We're going to go,
Yeah,
ah, okay.
yeah, oopsie rose, there you are.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So
I don't know.
but no, no, we're good. But so it is funny because it is like that. That's why I like the pattern tracking where I'm like, okay, go back here. Here was the degree. What was that echo? And that's when I think for me astrology gets exciting because
Yeah,
we're in that circle, right? Like we're doing this over kind of and over and over and over again. So it's like re-meet yourself. What do you
right.
know now?
Yeah.
Right? Zach's not coming back. Listen, in fact, I actually found out that Zach went to jail, you guys. So thank God I didn't get what I wanted, right?
Well, but Stormy, he might get out at some point. I mean,
I just have
maybe,
to let it
maybe he
go.
needs some. He's still waiting for bail money. I mean, you're a Taurus. You can come up with it.
I can hold on. We can hold on. You know what I mean? So it's like, as you guys are hearing this, we laugh together. We laugh in community, right? Because that's what it's about. We're all surviving this whole thing. But what is it? Like, what's your Taurus thing that as this eclipse rolls around and it is 16 degrees, you're like, I've been beating that horse to death. It's maybe time to put the paddle down.
Yeah, absolutely, Stormy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's part of why, like, I made myself show up for
I know.
no, which it's just thoroughly enjoyable, and I totally appreciate. But at the same time, it's like, okay, Mango, it's time to like take your own advice and like, out of that comfort zone you go. And I mean, that's different for every person out there, and for every individual. As you're saying, like, depending on where these eclipse patterns fall, you may be in more of a position of like assist, understand this dynamic, so you can assist and support somebody else that is
Mm-hmm.
maybe in a trying to like push or needing to push through some of those
Sure.
limitations that we can impose on ourselves.
Which I think
But
is
yeah.
is neat. I want to just highlight this for a second. So thank you for saying that because you have a Scorpio moon and I have a Taurus sun. So we dance the dance of opposition. And this really was a very big deal. We've not known each other long and we got in here and started to get a feel for each other. And your moon trying to come out here and my sun, God to help you, dragging you out. It was like, well, let's meet in the middle on how we actually present this. And I share that and I want to share that with people because many people are coming out of their comfort zones, right?
Yeah.
And so what's the agreement in the middle that you can find to make work and it becomes something gorgeous and we share it in public.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta walk the walk, right?
Yeah, you sure do, darn it, right?
you know Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but
So it's good to
it's been a joy.
collaborate in all sorts of ways. Yeah, I for me too, Stormy. I really appreciate it, and I can just say from having your assistance as a business person and somebody who is really good at some stuff that I really suck at. I so appreciate what you have to offer, and I just thank you for your willingness and putting your trust in me that I might have something of value to say, because I'm not sure that when you've been helping me with my tech stuff, it's really come across that I've got anything to offer at all. If you really want to see like the worst side of Mango, Gemini, Mars, like, just help me to install my online scheduler. I've been doing astrology for 35 years, but call me on my old fashioned. No, I don't text. Yeah, so
Right?
thank you for offering
Yeah.
me that.
You are so welcome. And thank you for letting me do that. And thank you for sharing that here because these are the things that we're experiencing out there. And so, letting yourself be seen in that way is to me even more delicious than all of the astrology because it's what our fellow humans are also trying to do with varying levels of success. So it is like, come on out here, friends.
Yeah, it's not so bad.
It's not so
I don't
bad,
know.
right?
I won't get hate mail or anything. Well, oh, no, I'll just go back under my rock. No, I won't get hate mail. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I think that this is like we've talked about a lot, and I just really appreciate you going a little bit deeper into these qualities and these ideas and holding space, right? It's just not everybody's not having a fun time, depending on that definition, and there is suffering, and you can be and part of a species that is suffering and thriving at the same time, and it is simply where do we make value? Where do we make space for what's valuable? With others and within ourselves. So I appreciate you coming.
Likewise, Stormy. Thank you.
Yes, and you guys, anything we talked about in here, if you heard a word like out of bounds or you're like, oh wait, hold on, where's that eclipse? There is content on this channel available for you to go back to and peel more and more into. So if you heard it, if you spot it, it is somewhere around here. So make sure you're checking that out. And I will make sure that all of Mango's information is below this video as well. Because if you vibe and you resonate in, it's all about getting you to your right tribe, right? Or to your right people you can
Yeah.
learn and you can connect with. So you got 7 months of Mars and Gemini to contact
And
Mango.
I just want to say, I am not afraid of your darkness. So bring it to
Yes.
me, really. That's one of the things. I'm a very versatile astrologer, but I think if I have any special gift, it's really to hold a space for the exploration of some of the things that we might, deem like, oh, I don't know if that's really acceptable to. So if you want to challenge yourself in that way, it's a gentle space, and an honest one, to my best ability.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you hold that space. And we, as other practitioners who don't hold it like you, have the opportunity to say, here's a tribes member for you, go to her, right? And it's an opportunity for all of us out there as you're listening to remember, you are not all things for all people. Stay in your lane and celebrate those who do what you do, but differently because people need their help, right? They don't need you to be everything. So, all right, you guys, I love you a ton. Mango, I hope you'll be back. I
I
hope.
hope so. Thank you. I
Yes.
totally enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you again so much, Stormy, and for everybody who's listening to this. Bye.
Bye,
I'd
guys.
love
We'll
to
see you
hear from
next
you.
time. We'll see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.